Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Let's do it.
Awesome. This time we're taking a look at ethical hacking, a topic that seems to have captured quite a few of your imaginations.
Definitely an important one, especially these days.
Couldn't agree more. And judging by the articles, research papers, and even personal notes some of you sent in,
Sounds like some dedicated listeners.
definitely. You're already pretty well versed in the world of cybersecurity. So today, we're going to dive even deeper.
Love that.
We're going to tackle those questions you've been asking. What exactly is ethical hacking? How does it differ from the malicious kind?
The techniques, the career paths,
All that. We'll even look at some famous cases where ethical hackers basically saved the day.
some pretty wild stories out there.
Oh yeah, get ready for some serious whoa moments. We're talking about the tools of the trade things, like vulnerability scanners, social engineering, stuff that might surprise you.
There's a lot more to it than most people realize.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget the legal and ethical tightrope these guys walk. It's a tricky business for sure.
Absolutely. You gotta be careful.
But we'll get to all of that in a bit. First things first, let's define what we're dealing with here. Ethical hacking.
So, in the simplest terms, imagine someone trying to break into a bank vault, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it. Not good if they're a criminal.
Exactly. But what if the bank actually hired that person to test their security? See if they could find a way in.
Ah, okay. I see where you're going with this.
That's basically the core of ethical hacking, using the same skills and knowledge as someone with malicious intent but with permission to expose those vulnerabilities before the bad guys can exploit them.
So it's like authorized, controlled breaking and entering, but in the digital world.
That's a great way to put it.
But this isn't just about randomly poking around, right? There are specific techniques involved.
You bet. And one of the most important ones is penetration testing, or pen testing as it's often called.
Pen testing, okay? And what does that involve?
It's all about actively trying to breach a system's defenses. Could be a network, a web application, even a physical location. The goal is to find those weak points, just like our bank vault example.
Makes sense. So they're basically putting themselves in the shoes of a hacker to see what they would see.
Precisely.
And I noticed you've highlighted social engineering quite a bit in the listener notes. That seems less about tech and more about human psychology.
You nailed it. Social engineering is all about the human element.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's about understanding how people think and behave online, and then using that knowledge to see if you can trick them into revealing sensitive information or giving you access to something they shouldn't.
So like sending a phishing email that looks so real, someone might accidentally give away their password.
Bingo! You've got it. Ethical hackers might recreate these scenarios, but safely to see if a company's employees will fall for it.
Right, so if they can do it, imagine what a real criminal could pull off.
Exactly.
That's scary. But also kind of brilliant using these tactics for good instead of evil.
That's the whole point.
Hold on, rewind a sec. Phishing email. I know our listener is probably familiar with this, but for anyone just tuning in, could you explain what that is?
Sure thing. Imagine you get an email that looks exactly like it's from your bank, right? Asking you to update your account details.
Oh yeah, I've seen those before.
But it's actually a trap, a cleverly disguised one set by a hacker to steal your info. And that's just one example of phishing.
Wow, okay, so ethical hackers really are playing the role of the bad guy to ultimately help the good guys.
That's one way to look at it.
And from what I'm seeing here in the notes, it's not just psychology they use. There are some serious tech tools in play here too, right?
Oh yeah, tons of them. It's like having a whole toolbox full of gadgets and gizmos.
So walk me through some of those. What are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, you've got vulnerability scanners. These are like automated detectives.
Detectives. That's an interesting way to describe them.
They basically comb through systems looking for known weaknesses.
Okay, any specific ones you can mention? I know our listeners love learning about this stuff.
Sure, Nessus and OpenVAS are pretty popular, really effective too. Then there are network analyzers like Wireshark.
Wireshark. I've heard of that one.
It lets you see the traffic flowing through a network so you can spot anything suspicious.
Like a digital traffic cop.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget Metasploit.
Metasploit. What does that one do?
It's a framework that lets you test and exploit vulnerabilities once you've found them.
Oh, wow. So it's like the ultimate hacking toolkit.
You could say that.
It's kind of mind-blowing how much goes into all this.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the ethics of it all, right? I mean, these are powerful tools, and knowledge is power. How do you make sure that power is used for good?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's where the line between white hat and black hat hacking comes in.
White hat, black hat.
Ah.
Love those terms. But
Uh,
what do they actually mean?
It all comes down to permission and intent. Ethical hackers, the white hats, they operate with clear guidelines, a strict scope of work, full transparency with the organization they're working for. Their goal is to improve security, not exploit weaknesses for personal gain.
Got it. So the white hats are the good guys, the black hats,
Mm.
not so much.
Pretty much.
But let's say, hypothetically speaking, an ethical hacker finds something truly bad while on a job. Not just a security flaw, but like illegal activity.
Yeah.
What then?
That's where things get tricky.
I imagine.
It's not just about finding the problem, it's about addressing it the right way. That's where responsible disclosure comes in.
Responsible disclosure. Explain that one to me.
Let's say during a pen test, an ethical hacker uncovers evidence of, I don't know, financial fraud, something serious.
Okay, yeah. Big problem.
They have a legal and ethical obligation to report that, even if it means going outside the initial scope of the engagement.
Wow. So potentially blowing the whistle even if it makes things complicated.
Exactly. It can get messy.
That takes guts. And speaking of different paths, what does it actually take to become an ethical hacker? What kind of person thrives in this field?
Well, first and foremost, you need that passion for cybersecurity, a real desire to learn and stay ahead of the curve. Because this isn't your typical 9-to-5 job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The threat landscape is constantly evolving.
I bet. New threats popping up all the time.
Exactly. And technically speaking, a solid understanding of networking, operating systems, and programming is essential.
I was going to ask about that. So you got to be pretty tech savvy to even get started.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I imagine certifications are pretty important too, right?
Absolutely. The Certified Ethical Hacker, CEH certification, is a great starting point. And there are tons of others that delve into more specialized areas like web application security or mobile security.
Right. Got to keep learning and leveling up those skills.
Always. But it's not just about the technical stuff, though. You also need those soft skills.
The soft skills. Explain what those are in this context.
Things like good communication, the ability to clearly document your findings, and present them in a way that non-technical folks can understand.
Makes sense. You got to be able to explain all this complex stuff to the people who need to know, but might not have your level of expertise.
Exactly. It's about making it accessible and actionable.
So it sounds like a demanding but incredibly rewarding career path.
Oh, absolutely. No 2 days are the same.
I bet. So, final question. Where is all of this headed? What's the future of ethical hacking?
Ooh, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a rich man, like you said earlier.
Right.
But seriously, we're already seeing the rise of AI-powered attacks, which are way more sophisticated and harder to detect.
AI, that's a whole other can of worms.
It is, and ethical hackers will need to adapt, learning to use AI defensively to combat these threats.
So, almost like an AI arms race. That's fascinating and a little bit scary, to be honest.
It's definitely challenging, but that's what keeps this field so engaging, you know?
Constantly evolving, always something new to learn.
Exactly. You're constantly learning, pushing the boundaries, and ultimately making the digital world a safer place.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the technical nitty-gritty of pen testing and social engineering.
To the psychology behind it all.
Right. And of course, the ethical considerations that separate the good guys, those white hats, from the bad guys.
Yeah.
You've got a solid foundation now, and I'm sure you'll continue to explore this fascinating field even further. But here's something to ponder. As technology evolves at this breakneck speed, what ethical dilemmas do you think will be unique to the future of ethical hacking? It's a question worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. See ya.